Hello YouTube, my name is Nero. Today I have a very special video for all of you guys because it has been brought to my attention that there is footage out there in beautiful high definition of the Call of Duty 4 pre-alpha multiplayer. In this pre-alpha build, we are going to be able to see a lot of the maps that we all know and love from Call of Duty 4 in their earliest stages of development, as well as some gameplay of maps that were worked on but were ultimately cut from the final version of Call of Duty 4. Before we go any further, I would like to give credit where credit is due. Big thank you to Matthew, who brought this video to my attention, and super big thank you to UHDGaming for posting the original content. What I plan to do with this video is go over each map and give you guys the broad strokes, quickly covering each map and showing off the noticeable differences, but I highly encourage you all to check out the original video by UHDGaming. You can find a link to it down there in the description. The original video is actually 30 minutes long and is going to show you a lot more than what I'm going to be showing you guys here in this video, so be sure to check it out and be sure to spam the comments saying that Nero sent you. The original video only has 1,500 views at the time of me recording this, which is an absolute travesty considering the wonderful content that that video actually contains. It is raw, uncut, 4K quality gameplay of the Call of Duty 4 pre-alpha, which is absolutely insane. Now, keep in mind, 4K sounds a little bit weird. It's 4K because that's what he rendered the video at, therefore it's a super high quality here on YouTube. It wasn't like it was actually recorded in 4K. I highly doubt that's possible, considering it's Call of Duty 4's pre-alpha, for crying out loud. I should also mention here at the very beginning that I don't know UHDGaming personally, and I do not have any idea how he has access to this super pre-alpha build of Call of Duty 4. As far as I know, there is no download link online or anything like that, and he's going to be playing on the Xbox 360, so I suppose it's possible that he has access to like an old dev kit that Infinity Ward used in the creation of Call of Duty 4. In any case, I don't have access to this build. I don't know where you can download it. I have no idea how he has access to it, so something to bear in mind. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's check out the Call of Duty 4 multiplayer in some of its earliest stages of development. So here are the maps that we are going to be looking at today. Some are going to be the ones that we all know and love, and others are going to be cut maps that we have never actually seen before. The first map we're going to be checking out is going to be Backlot, and right off the start here, let's freeze frame. Take a look at this UI. Goodness gracious, it's ugly. It's actually, if you look at it, it's a modernized version of Infinity Ward's then previous game, Call of Duty 2, with the score being on the top left and the minimap being in the bottom left. Looking at the weapon here, he's obviously holding an M16, but it says he has an AK-47, and look at the create a class menu here for a moment. Like, this is super old school looking, and I definitely kind of like it. It has like an old school charm to it. But just for comparison's sake here, let's look at the pre-alpha UI versus the final UI that they ended up going with the final version of Call of Duty 4. I mean, it's night and day different, and I think we're all happy that they decided to make some changes to the original user interface. Now, looking at the gameplay, take a look at this pinkish tint that the map has. This is either meant to have the map feel like it's set in the early morning or the early evening, but either way, I think it's safe to say that we're all pretty happy that they ended up changing this map's colors in later builds of the game. As we see him walking throughout the map here, you're going to notice that a lot of Backlot hasn't really changed a whole lot since the pre-alpha. Like, everything is pretty much in the exact same place. There's a couple of differences, some different vehicles and different spots and stuff like that, but for the most part, they really didn't change a whole lot about Backlot. The biggest difference I could actually find is if you go here next to the construction building, this little pathway here that a lot of people use in Domination, well, it's actually a bit more condensed here, I guess. There's a lot more junk on the ground, but aside from that, Backlot really did not change a whole lot since the pre-alpha, with the exception of the colors, a change I think we're all pretty happy about. The next map we're going to be checking out is going to be called City Streets, which of course was the precursor to District. For those that don't know, the console code name for District is actually City Streets. Originally, looking at the gameplay here, District was going to have no well, which I think is very interesting. For some reason, when I think of District, I think of that well, even though it doesn't really play a major role in the map whatsoever. As he walks through the market here, you guys are going to notice that there are some minor differences here and there, but of course, minor changes make all the difference in a game like Call of Duty. vehicles on these streets here are going to be set in different places, and the map itself is just pretty much the same, but little tiny differences here and there, which is going to be a recurring theme you're going to notice throughout this entire video. Now, if we freeze frame towards the end of his gameplay, you're going to notice something very interesting. The building that would eventually serve as the search and destroy spawn room for the defending team was initially inaccessible. Right? You see this door right here, it's completely blocked off. I mean, it's possible that there's like a side entrance to this building, but we don't see that here in this footage, and I find that to be very, very interesting. Next up on the list should be City Streets Night, but unfortunately, UHDGaming did not show us any footage of that map in this video, so instead, we're going to be moving on to Convoy, which was actually the precursor to Ambush, kind of similar to District and City Streets. The COD 4 console code name for Ambush is actually Convoy. Now, as you guys can see, this is very similar to the Ambush that we all know and love, but it's very, very rough around the edges. In fact, the layout that we're seeing here is nearly identical to the campaign mission Charlie Don't Surf. For those that don't know, a lot of the old Call of Duty multiplayer maps were heavily inspired from campaign missions. So basically what Infinity Ward did was they took this particular section of Charlie Don't Surf from the campaign and thought to themselves, well, that would be a good multiplayer map. Let's do that. We'll call it Convoy. And obviously they changed a lot about this map, and I think those changes were for the better because in my opinion, Ambush is one of the best maps in Call of Duty history, and I'm very happy to see it in such like an early stage of development. If you guys want to run through this particular area, I'm telling you, boot up Modern Warfare Remastered, boot up Call of Duty 4, go to the campaign mission Charlie Don't Surf. You're going to be able to play in pretty much this exact same area with a couple of changes. It's so cool to see these maps in such an early stage of development. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and check out Crash, which is by far one of the most beloved maps in Call of Duty history. And as you guys can see, we have a downed Black Hawk helicopter here in the very middle of the map, and the area between the blue room and the 3-story building is also much different than what we know it today. And I think it's really cool to see stuff like this. I see the earliest stages of Crash's development. How cool is this? Now, I think the reason why they got rid of the Black Hawk helicopter in exchange for a Sea Knight in the final build of the game is because the Sea Knight, of course, has that back entrance to it, and that makes it so you basically have extra ways to get towards the B flag in domination. So I feel as though it was put there from a design decision. I think the Black Hawk helicopter actually looks a bit better, but in terms of actual gameplay and making a good multiplayer map, the Sea Knight seemed to make a little bit more sense. But overall, very cool to see Crash here in this video. Next up, we have Crossfire, and before we go any further, can we all just take a moment to appreciate this super early model of the W1200? This thing is absolutely awesome looking. So on the surface, Crossfire seems to be very similar to what we see in the final build of the game, but you're going to notice that they actually added and removed some rooms. So for example, in this cafe building, there is an entirely different side room that is not there in the final version of Call of Duty 4. At the end of the street here, the buildings are actually inaccessible, whereas they are actually accessible in the final build of Call of Duty 4. The parking lot that was most notable from the campaign actually still remains there, and the sniper building, the broken down sniper building I'm going to call it, that's actually much bigger in the pre-alpha as compared to what we know today. All these changes are definitely pretty interesting. They're definitely making it so it's more in line with what the campaign was like for the mission Warpig, but still, I think this map is much different, and I think it'd be interesting to see how it would play, but at the same time, I think the changes they made were definitely for the better. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Crossfire in the world, don't let me paint that picture, but I'm just saying, I feel as though the final version of Crossfire is actually much better than the pre-alpha version of Crossfire. I would have liked to have had that side entrance there by the cafe, but everything else seems like a downgrade, at least in my opinion. Next up, we have the map Dusk, which of course is going to be the first cut map featured here in this video. So Dusk itself was loosely based off of Dawnville, which was a map layout that was used in Call of Duty United Offensive, Call of Duty 2, and that layout was actually eventually repurposed in Black Ops 2 as the map standoff, but as you guys can no doubt tell from the gameplay here, Dusk doesn't seem very similar to Standoff really in any way. I mean, they have a somewhat similar layout, but the buildings are in different locations, there are different access points to each one of these buildings, and looking at it, I mean, it's fun to look at cut content, but at the same time, I can kind of see why they cut this map. It doesn't really seem to have a bunch of flow. Like, there's like really tight, packed, condensed areas, and there's like wide open, like fields and stuff like that, I'm going to call them. It's really weird for a map. And in fact, way back in the day, Robert Bowling, 402, as a lot of people knew him, the former community manager at Infinity Ward, he actually tweeted about this map. Operator Perry, who is a fellow content creator here on YouTube, he tweeted to him way back in the day asking about Dusk and why it was cut. And Robert Bowling replied to him saying that map was decent but wasn't stellar, which is why it never made the cut. No good routes, all fighting ended in center. It's hard to say without having actually played the map myself, but from what I'm looking at here, it kind of seems like it wouldn't have been that great of a map. I can kind of see what Robert Bowling was actually talking about, but still, it's incredible to be able to see cut content like this, and thank you so much once again to UHDGaming for allowing us to see this map with our own eyes. Next up, we're going to be checking out Hill, which of course was another cut map from Call of Duty 4, and as you guys can see, just based off the loading screen, it's going to be very similar to the campaign mission Heat. We start things off here at the barn that we of course were holding up towards the beginning of the mission, and the map itself is in fact just very, very similar to the campaign mission Heat, almost identical in a way. Like I said, going back to Ambush, like what they usually do is they take a mission from the campaign, they just make it a multiplayer map, and then they make some changes to it. It looks like this map was cut pretty early, and I think I can see why. 1, the map is freaking giant. 2, it's a very uphill map. Like the barn where we started is like super high up in the air as compared to like the bottom portion of the map. And if there's like one thing we know about war and battles and stuff like that, is that the high ground typically wins, right? So we've never really seen a Call of Duty map that has super high ground like this before. And I think the reason why is the people that owned the top portion of the map would be at a huge advantage as compared to the people on the bottom section of the map, as well as like, you think of like the layout of a Call of Duty multiplayer map. I mean, just because it works in the campaign to tell a story and have us like do a mission doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate well over into the multiplayer, which is why I think they ultimately decided to cut Hill from the multiplayer. But again, thank you once again to UHDGaming, because we've never seen this map before, and I think it's freaking awesome that we are able to see it with our own eyes. Next up, we're going to be checking out Overgrown, and take a look here, ladies and gentlemen, at this early M21 model. If he actually shoots it here, you can actually hear that it sounds like the M40A3. This build is so early that the M21 had an early model that eventually was scrapped for a better one, as well as they did not actually have its own sounds put into the game yet. It's just reused the M40A3 sounds, which I think is pretty interesting. So we calls in a helicopter here, and as you guys can see, it's going to be flying in roughly the same route that we see today, which is pretty cool, landing in the ravine in the center of the map, and then looping around and eventually going over towards the barn. There isn't a lot to see here on Overgrown, unfortunately, because the vast majority of the map that we see here in the pre-alpha is what we actually see in the final build of Call of Duty 4. But an interesting note is that during the gameplay here, he is going to call in an airstrike on himself, and when he's flying around the map in spectator mode, you can kind of see where the airstrike actually landed. That would have been a pretty cool feature if like airstrikes were to have actually like made dents and stuff like that in the maps. Now I know in Call of Duty 4, as well as Modern Warfare Remastered, they leave like a brief minor dent in the ground, but it'd be cool if like they left a permanent dent in the ground for the entirety of the match. But that's not really like a Call of Duty thing, it's more of a Battlefield thing, but still, it's definitely an interesting mechanic that maybe at one point they were actually considering adding to the Call of Duty 4 multiplayer. Next up, we have Pipeline, and right away, you guys are going to notice that at the top of the hill, we were originally going to have an entire side area, which was eventually removed and replaced with like a factory of sorts in the live version of Pipeline. Now, later on in the gameplay itself, he actually shows like what this little town is going to look like. Can you imagine actually having this on Pipeline? It's very obvious to me why this was actually cut from the final version of Pipeline. I mean, just imagine it, right? Pipeline's one of the biggest maps in Call of Duty 4, and let's take it so the top of the hill, which is like the most relevant portion of the map, let's make it so that area has like an entire side town right there next to it, which is basically big enough to be a map in and of itself. Like, I can definitely see why they cut this, but it's definitely interesting to see, as well as this RPG. I mean, the original RPG looks like an AT-4 if you ask me, so I think that's definitely pretty interesting. The rest of Pipeline, as you guys see him flying around here in spectator mode, is pretty similar to what we see in the final version of Call of Duty 4, with a few minor layout differences that I'm sure you guys are going to see if you decide to pause the video. But again, go check out UHDGaming's video to see the full gameplay that he actually posted of Pipeline, because it's definitely interesting to check out the entirety of the map. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we finally get a glimpse of one of the nighttime maps we are going to be checking out, Strike Night. Look how freaking beautiful this is, ladies and gentlemen. I have been advocating for years, ever since like Modern Warfare 3, that Call of Duty needs to have day-night cycles in their maps. It would be so awesome, and there'd be so much extra variety if every single map in the game had a daytime version and a nighttime version. It seems like such an easy thing for them to implement as well. Just make it so when you load into a map, have a 50-50 chance of it being daytime or 50-50 chance of it being nighttime. It seems so simple, as well as like a dynamic weather system. I think that'll be pretty freaking fantastic. But as you guys can see here, it is a little bit dark, and I can see why people maybe don't want maps to also be nighttime, because nighttime maps are typically darker. But I mean, I think that's really easily fixed with a couple of extra light sources here and there. But like most maps here in this video, there are a couple of minor layout changes. The most notable ones are, of course, on top of the hill, as well as the side path. But man, it's so freaking cool to see not only Strike in like its earliest stages of development, but also see the map set at nighttime. I think that's so freaking awesome. Now, to end off the video, UHDGaming shows us a mission from the campaign, and this is actually going to blow your mind, because this is actually so early on, and you guys may remember this from my original cut content video, that Captain Price is with the Americans, and he has a completely different voice than what we know today. So listen to his voice here right quick.
Stuck half a click north of here. We gotta hustle, let's go.
And as you guys can see, he has the same model that we know from Call of Duty 4, but he's an American, he's part of the Marines, and he has a completely different voice. And actually, the mission we're actually on is going to be the Bog, which was something that was not cut from Call of Duty 4, but we're playing as Private First Class Michael Carver, which was not the person we were playing as in Call of Duty 4. I think it's so freaking interesting to see stuff like this. Now, once again, I want you guys to go ahead and check out UHDGaming's YouTube channel, because one, this video is incredible. I want you guys to see the full 30-minute version of it, although this video is kind of lengthy with me discussing all the different aspects of the map, whereas in his video, he's going through with no commentary whatsoever, just showing you different portions of the map. But on his channel, he also has more pre-alpha footage of Call of Duty 4, including some cut campaign missions and early builds of campaign missions, which again will include the original American Captain Price. How freaking cool is that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you guys here in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys find this to be as interesting as I do. Like, I love video games. I love gaming as a whole, and there are so many games out there that I just love. And to see any of those games, not even just Call of Duty, in like a super pre-alpha build or a super early developmental stage, it's so freaking interesting to me to be able to see this kind of stuff. And so hopefully you guys all enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys all found it helpful and informative. Once again, big shout out to Matthew for making me aware of this guy's channel, as well as UHDGaming for actually putting together these videos. Once again, guys, check out his channel, check out his videos. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Drop me a rating. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.